extending our hands in the spirit of reciprocity, the balance of giving and receiving. Sifa, Zote, Zendekwa, Mumba, which in Swahili means all praise is due the Creator. And as we use this grace over food, we're using it in these videos in partaking of some food for thought. I'm Baba Brother D, and we're doing this video as part of a project of the New Ashe, New African Social Health Effort. And let me immediately get into the purpose of these videos. A lot of times I leave that toward the end, but let me start off with the purpose of these videos. Whether you agree or disagree with the things that I may lay out in this or any other video, we're looking for your attention. And with that attention, we want to draw more people into growing practice of forming tight-knit small groups in which we can learn together, push each other forward, be on each other's case, learn criticism, self-criticism, learn how to more effectively disagree, and disagree in a way that's not just simply you got your opinion and I got mine, but disagree in a way where we dig deeper to find greater unity, to be able to make decisions together, to be able to catch each other's back. And more people are doing it, and we need even more people to do that, because from those small groups and from the skills and the practice that we gain in those small groups can come together and tackle bigger questions, bigger issues that plague the Black community. Today's topic has to do with Pan-Africanism, a word that you've probably heard. I've considered myself a Pan-Africanist for the past 48 years. I was introduced to that term in 1971. It's a concept that relates to African people working together across various boundaries. Now, the earliest usage of the term that I am aware of is when Sylvester Williams of Trinidad pulled together in 1900, I believe it was, the first Pan-African Conference. And then later on, W.E.B. Du Bois pulled together between 1919 and 1945 5 Pan-African Congresses. People understanding the need that whether you were in the Caribbean or North America or North Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, South Africa, West Africa, living in Europe, or any place else that you find African people, it was useful for us to cooperate with each other across these geographic boundaries to further our common objectives. So the traditional usage of this term is associated with geographic differences, it's associated with ethnic differences, it's associated with religious differences. And in this video, I want to introduce some expansion on the usual conceptions of Pan-Africanism to get into other differences as well. Now, The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the African who led the largest organization of Africans in contemporary history, put forward a concept of a United States of Africa. Later on, Pan-Africanists like Kwame Nkrumah, who was part of that 5th Pan-African Congress that was led by W.E.B. Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah and others like Sekou Touré and others fused the notion of Pan-Africanism with this concept of a United States of Africa. And African National Science, an organization that I'm part of and have mentioned in other videos, is firmly rooted in this notion of Pan-Africanism and a United States of Africa. We put forward a slight modification of what Nkrumah said. Pan-Africanism we define as the building of an interterritorial black nation through the total unification of Africa under an all-African people's best interest government as a prerequisite to the total liberation, self-determination of African people worldwide. Now, this is not a traditional idea. Pan-Africanism is not traditional. Matter of fact, somebody could argue that it's traditional for African ethnic groups to get into it. Conflict between African ethnic groups over the past several hundred years has a key responsibility for us being in the situation that we're in today. Conflict between African ethnic groups allowed for the flourishing of a transatlantic slave trade. It allowed for the conquering and carving up of Africa in the late 1800s. It allows for the continual dominance by Western European capital over Africa. And it still plagues us today. So this initial idea of cooperation across various boundaries, such as ethnicity and geography and language and religion, calls for the need for Pan-Africanism, not because it's traditional, but because it is seen as useful in solving the problems that we have. Now, is this some kind of pipe dream? Are we putting forward this notion because it gives us this warm, fuzzy feeling of we just all need to be together? Is this some unrealistic and idealistic dream that we have? We are advancing the notion of Pan-Africanism, both in its sense of cooperation, and as I prefer to say, some people talk about international cooperation. I prefer to say interterritorial cooperation as we project the notion of the African nation, as we build on the vision of the African nation. We are putting forward this notion out of being convinced that it is required for our survival and development on this planet. Major political unification across large territories is not unusual in terms of human history. That's not something that's far-fetched. All sorts of unifications occur, all sorts of unifications break down, and new ones occur. Nothing far-fetched about it. So it's within the realm of realism for us to project that objective. What would be new, though, is the building of such political union under an all African people's best interest government. That's some new stuff that we have to get better at doing. Because we have this history of folks coming in the name of the people and turning into just new sets of exploiters. We would critique those who came before us, that there was this attempt at building Pan-Africanism in the political sense from the top down. And some of us recognize it needs to be built from the bottom up.